interested in natural healing, biohacking, and serving our community to empower them that they can heal from the inside out without things like drugs and surgery, etc., and allowing ourselves to be, again, empowered in our own health journey. So I'll pass this along, let everybody introduce themselves this way. Oh, you got your own mic, perfect.
Sure, yeah. Hey, I'm actually a fill-in. I think a couple people couldn't make it, so I'm very happy to take this space. I'm Christian Rasmussen. I'm the owner of Minnesota Nice Botanicals. We're the largest importer, retailer, distributor of Amanita muscaria in the world, which is a very potent nootropic amongst some other things. And I'm all about biohacking, so I'm happy to be here.
All right. Oh, wow. Shit. My name is Dr. Brett, also a fellow vitalistic chiro at the Source St. Pete. Yeah, really happy to be here. Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, no, really excited to dive into all things natural healing. I feel like the world, and especially the U.S., has become dependent on very one-sided medical model, and so having some alternative viewpoints, discussions, anything that just opens the ballot up, that's what we're here for. So really excited to be here.
Brian Hamilton. First of all, I want to thank Chelsea, my friend, for inviting me to the panel, and I want to recognize Pete for throwing this amazing event. Cannadelic, right? It's focusing on mental health and therapeutic products that are natural, and that segues into what I do. So my company is called Private Label Health and Beauty, and I've been manufacturing health and beauty products for over 20 years, so that's my background. I also have talk about mental health, I have a mental health therapy app where people can go online and talk to a therapist 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we make it very affordable. Also have a telemedicine company that makes access to doctors very affordable as well. So those are my goals, to have therapeutic supplements available for people's natural health and access to healthcare at an affordable rate. Those are my two goals. A little bit about my background, but before I get into that, I do have a booth out front. If anybody needs my cards or wants to talk to me later, and I want to introduce my managing partner, Alexis. Do you mind standing up and just waving to the camera or something? Mm-hmm. So if you see Alexis, yay, walking the floor with me, feel free to reach out to her. Basically, I get the concept, I turn it into reality, but she makes sure the projects move forward. So my background is, I have a graduate degree from Nova Southeastern, which also has medical and legal degrees as well. And so my first journey was in clinical trials, phases 1 through 4. Found that very interesting, all the research that was going on there. And then my next position, I worked at the Laboratory Corporation of America, where I really dove into diagnostic laboratory services. And I had the privilege to study at Research Triangle for molecular and biology and pathology. And I met a lot of really smart people. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I'm on the business side. But I get to interact with really intelligent scientists and researchers, and kind of washes over. And then from there, I became an executive at a drug company. And it was at that point that I started thinking about my own professional journey. People are going to diagnostic labs to diagnose problems that they're having that they already have, or they're using drugs to solve problems that they're already, experiencing. And I thought, how can I get in front of that? How can I get to where I can be involved and we can help people before that even happens? And hence, that's how I get into natural products. So I make skincare, supplements, things that can help people's immune system be more stable so they don't have these problems really going forward. And then the reason that I'm here is to impart that with everybody. Now, the thing that's really curious to me, and it kind of ties into the whole marijuana industry, is that there's this new research peptide emergence into peptides, right? And it's a lot of it is not for animal or human use. And I just wanted to dive into that later on the panel, if that's okay, if you want to ask some questions and so forth. But I have to read this disclaimer. So my company does not manufacture or endorse research peptides for human or animal use. These substances are not approved for such purposes, and I strictly adhere to all regulatory guidelines. My discussions about these peptides are purely from scientific curiosity standpoint, similar to how the landscape for substances like marijuana evolved over time, if that makes sense. So I firmly believe in sharing information and knowledge responsibly, ensuring that any insights are framed with the correct legal and ethical context. So with that in mind, thank you.
Of course. Thank you. Good to have some disclaimers, understand what we're getting ourselves into.
Thank you.
Covering things up. So I guess on that note, we can start things off with emerging aspects of healthcare, natural health remedies or practices, or even things like technologies, peptides included, that might be great on the educational side of things for our people to know about. So maybe things like the peptides themselves, breath work, biohacking, et cetera. If each of you want to share a few minutes on what's most interesting to you and what you found beneficial on the natural healing side of things, you can go ahead and share a little bit on that front as well.
All right. So, as I had mentioned, I manufacture health and beauty products. So I get to interact with really smart people that are developing brands. They come up with ideas, concept to reality. Like, for example, I'm working on a berberine. Berberine is kind of a weight loss supplement that is different than the weight loss shots that we're hearing about, like Mounjaro, Ozempic, Wegovy, Zepbound, those kind of things. So it's a natural thing. We're putting it in a gummy, and it's really hard to get that to taste good because it tastes horrible. But it took us about 2 years, and we're finally there. We're going to launch that into Costco, I think, for this client. So it's really interesting when that happens. But as far as the peptides go, so I don't possess them, I don't own them, I don't sell them. However, I ended up with the COVID about 3 years ago, and I gained a bunch of weight. I ended up with a heart condition, and I nearly died. And I'm not anti-vax, I'm not pro-vax, I'm right down the middle. I'm Switzerland when it comes to that. I just did the vaccine because it was recommended through friends, and but I got bit by it. And some people did well, and I'm one of the unlucky ones. So I ended up with a double heart procedure. I ended up weighing 270 pounds. I was on medications of $700 a month to keep my heart from failing. I was in heart failure. And that's when I was introduced by the doctor to these weight loss peptides like tirzepatide, semaglutide. So it was prescribed to me. And the next thing you know, I lost 70 pounds. My waist went from 42 to 32. The hunger thoughts disappeared, the depression, and I was taking off all the drugs. And I've been fully released from my cardiologist, and my heart is in full sinus. And I thought, it changed my life. My life was kind of over at that point. And by the way, I am chronologically 66 years old, but biologically I'm in my late 40s. And I've learned to do that through biohacking, through the supplements I have. But I think that the peptides are the next emergent, and I'm really interested in the knowledge of that. Although I don't take any, I'd like to see what happens in the next 5 or 10 years.
Beautiful. It's awesome, man. It's cool that your chronological age can be so different from our biological age, and how that works to allow ourselves the technology to put these things into practice and watch how the body heals and even goes backwards. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Dr. Brett, do you have anything for us?
Yeah, actually, with our realm and really our empowering, essentially the healing from the inside out. Obviously, I'm a chiro, so we're going to talk from that lens. One of the things I want to touch on is actually the power of breath work. It's definitely a buzzword. A lot of people doing Wim Hof, a lot of things going on. And with that, it's recognizing kind of the deeper layers to it. And so when you think breath work, there is a work component, but the breath that's the vital part. That is the life force within the body, right? And so when we think of a way to, I guess, backtrack a little bit, the world we live in is very sympathetic driven, right? It's this work, work, work. We're all in this very high vibration for most of the day, if not all the day. And so finding those breaks to kind of drop out of that really stimulated, sensitive, arena. And breathwork's a great way to start that. When you think of breathwork, it's essentially the breath is the primary way that your brain recognizes what state your body's in, right? Specifically your nervous system. And so if we think of that panicked breath, that's a very shallow, that's up here, right? And so we think of the chest tightness, the flushing of the face. Sometimes even people get these chronic headaches. And so recognizing that a lot of that is driven from the inside, if you can dive into breath work and realize that that's your body's immediate way to switch your nervous system from that fight or flight to more of that rest, digest, heal, that's a big part. And so at the Source Chiropractic, we actually host breathwork, a big breathwork ceremony every second Wednesday of the month. Essentially an opportunity for community to get together and kind of unpack some of those deeper things. Sometimes it's very physical, sometimes it can go all the way to the spiritual. But finding kind of that middle ground and anywhere in between to find those times to take a step back, take a breath, regulate your nervous system from the inside out. It's a beautiful thing, and really excited that we get to put on at least once a month. So,
well said.
So yeah, I mean, I love all the new technology coming out. Peptides are amazing. How's this? Can you hear me a little better? Can you hear me a little better? All right. Can we turn this up a little bit? Yeah, all the peptides coming out are wonderful. I've used Glandicort. I don't know if you're familiar with that for adrenal glands. I'm really interested in, I'm in the plant medicine space. I think one of the things that I've been learning and coming to a lot recently is age old, and that's intention. And I think that comes into play really with any medicine that we're doing, any practice that we're doing. Something like breath work, setting an intention and really holding and embodying that intention as we move through the practice. It really brings things, to a whole nother level. And then there's different levels of intention that we can set. And as I've gone through my journey, one of the things that we work on a lot is getting people off of benzodiazepines or alcohol. It's my story. It's how I got into Amanita. It saved my life. We're finding time and time again that the more intensely and concentrated people can set these intentions, the more healing they do, and it's really an exponential factor. And I've found with utilizing peptides or utilizing anything that the intention that I set really sets the tone for what I'm working through and where I'm going. And I think that's, it's very talked about in the plant medicine space, but I don't think it's talked about as much in these other alternative health spaces. And I think it's a really important aspect to this healing journey that we're all on, or this evolution of consciousness and thought journey that we're all partaking in.
Amen. Yes, sir. I do love the coalescence nowadays of the new things like the breaking edge of the peptide research, as well as things coming back from the ancient side of things, like breathwork, which has been a staple in most indigenous traditions for thousands of years. And now we start to have the science to back it up. Similarly, people have been using sauna and cold plunge for thousands of years. Maybe they didn't have fancy plunges like we had today, but they're going in cold water and allowing their body to regulate that natural stress that's coming up from that experience. And again, it all comes down to nervous system regulation, allowing the breath to catch up with the stimulus involved and for us to become better for it. And all of the other benefits that cascade from that, like the anti-inflammation for our joints, our muscles, and even our brain, which coincides with the mental health aspect, and why so many people that practice Wim Hof regularly with the breath work and the cold plunge exposure allows their mental health to get back to places that maybe they've never experienced before, or back to before they experience a traumatic event. And it's really awesome to see, again, that we now have people like Huberman making this huge and bringing more science to something that people have been doing for thousands of years. So yeah, beautiful to see the way biohacking has kind of brought together the ancient and the futuristic into the same realm. It's beautiful. My next question for you guys is maybe spending a couple minutes on your healing journey and what kind of inspired you to become as aware as you are now in the health and wellness space, as well as what's inspired you to kind of keep moving forward and what you see in the future as the vision that we can all hold for natural healing.
Yeah, I really like this panel because it really ties into my philosophy, which is we can use these product technologies, but you just can't use them alone. We have to do things, right? So we can, from the mental health perspective, we can't think our way into a new way of acting, but we can act our way into a new way of thinking. So we have to take action with what we do. And that, I'll tie it into the weight loss shots, right? Like tirzepatide, semaglutide. It's really interesting what's happening with these products. If you don't know what off-labeling means, when I was at the drug company, I'll give you an example. Sildenafil is called Viagra, but before it was Viagra, it was a heart medication. And when they distributed the heart medication, the men said they started having this experience with erections, and they said, oh my, and they called it Viagra, and that's how it was born. They'll have a clinical studies on a particular drug that's safe and effective, and they'll find out if they change the dose a little bit, they just rename it, and the next thing you know, it has a different application. And we're talking about alcoholism and that kind of thing, and that difficulty. Tirzepatide came out, semaglutide came out, and it's for weight loss. Actually, originally, it was for lowering your A1C. So it's for pre-diabetics. And when they were taking it, they were having this side effect, much like the other thing I was talking about. And they said, I don't think about food anymore. I'm like, what do you mean I don't think about food anymore? They go, yeah, I don't even think about food. I'm not even hungry. It doesn't bother me. A lot of times food is an emotional thing, right? Like we have to eat it because we're depressed, or we just eat for no reason, or mindlessly eat. Because our hormones have depleted, that turns the switch off that tells us to stop eating. So what they found out was these peptides, which they used to lower the A1C, actually turned off the switch to think about food. So then they changed the name to, I think it was like Wegovy And Monjuro, which was for lowering the A1C, became Zepbound. So it just gets prescribed for the specific condition that they want to diagnose you with. But it went further. Now they're prescribing tirzepatide for heart medication. Back to my journey. They didn't have it back then. It just was coincidental that my heart healed, and now they prescribe it for that. They're prescribing it for sleep apnea, a different dose. And there's studies that I've seen from the University of Oklahoma where it talks about where people that drink don't have to. So severe alcoholics have taken this, and apparently it's helped them to kind of get off the booze. And then people that are like what I'd say normal drinkers that would have to have 2 or 3 beers, they're just not interested anymore. And it's not like antabuse where they just don't like it, they don't want the experience. They just feel satisfied or satiated. So that's what's happening is we're finding these different uses for the same thing. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to touch on, I guess, a little bit of my journey. Originally came into chiropractic. I had 2 ACL tears back in high school and kind of changed the trajectory of my life. Was in sports my whole life, and then went through the whole Western, I've had a couple surgeries, I've seen the whole Western medical model, and looked for something more. Going through, and then obviously now in practice, I'd say the biggest thing that is something I'd like to change is how our healthcare system is truly sick care. There's no health involved in that. There's money to be made in people being sick. There's a whole idea and a whole paradigm that you have to be on these pills, and that the reason you're in pain is because of a lack of ibuprofen pumping through your body, which is not true. And so looking to change just the perception of what health actually is. That's why we do what we do. It's why we're chiropractors. And really, like, my view and my goal for the future is that health isn't wrapped around a pill. Health is something that's inside you already, and something that with the right work, environment, love, structure, that can all be brought to light. And so that's pretty simple. That's what I'm going for.
Well said. So it's kind of like health is our natural state. It's just removing the barriers that keep us from that place in the first place.
Yep, exactly.
Well said.
Yeah, so, like I said, I was getting off benzodiazepines when I found Amanita. Worst experience I've ever been through. Years and years of withdrawal. It's really brain damage at that point. But through that process, I've been studying pharmacology and plant medicines and compounds since I was 13, 14. But it was really the impetus for me to get into really everything and anything that could help. Now, there are a lot of substances or plant medicines that can help with these things, but what it really comes down to is rewiring and retraining and stepping out of these divots and grooves that we find ourselves getting stuck in. So while there are many allies on this journey that can help us with that, the thing that I've found that's been the most beneficial, that's helped me grow the most is really meticulously watching my thought processes. It's meticulously watching how I react to situations, and then it's doing things in the affirmative that can allow me to step out of these grooves and these divots that my body and mind have programmed into my system. And yeah, there's plenty of things that can help us gently lift ourselves up, but really in the end it comes down to us and our own healing. And that's one of the, I used to rely on substances. That's why I got addicted to benzos or opiates in the first place. But learning this has been truly revolutionary for my own, and it makes so much sense. Like, I can understand it intellectually, but experiencing it and realizing it, making it real is a whole other thing. So I think that's also a really large aspect. And it goes back to the intention setting, like it's really up to us how much we heal. And relying on a crutch is what our current medical paradigm has done. Yeah.
Awesome. Dr. Dillon, welcome. Dr. Dillon's also
Good morning.
chiropractor with us at the Source. So the question initially was, what is a little bit of background on your health and healing journey, and what inspires you moving forward to be the vision of health in society in the West?
Beautiful. First of all, apologies for being late. I was finishing setting up the healing tent outside, so I hope that you guys all get a chance to go out there. There's a whole bunch of awesome healers out there facilitating today. But I am here now. My name is Dr. Dillon. I own the Source Chiropractic, and I am obsessed with how deep we can go on true healing. My question basically is, what does it mean to heal? That's been my question for a long time. My story started when I was 15. My dad started seeing a chiropractor because I grew up in a blue-collar family. He owns a landscaping company, and my mom was tired of hearing him bitch about his low back pain. But after a month of being in care, he got off of 75% of his fast and slow-acting insulin. And this blew my family's mind. We didn't really understand what was going on. The chiropractor explained how the autonomic nervous system works and how your brain and your body have to be in communication with one another for the body to operate at its optimum, and that there's not a specific adjustment that cures diabetes, but what is the cause to all these issues? And at 15 years old, for over half of my life, I've been chasing down the question, what is the cause to dis-ease, dysfunction, discomfort in the body? It's all a dissonance. What I've come to realize, and we're all here at Cannadelic, and so clearly we're at least curious or dabbling into the cannabis and psychedelic world. And so that's been something for me that has really unboxed my paradigm to the human experience. What I've realized is that at the pure core of everything, it's just energy. We are all energy. Everything is energy. We are here in the physical to experience a physical life, to have cause and effect, right? And so there are consequences that we experience here that you can't experience if you just think about things. Those thoughts can manifest in the physical, but you experience everything in the physical. It's why you'll hear the mystics and the gurus talk about the third dimension being the heart space, right? The dimension of love, the dimension of light. Well, when we're in dissonance in this dimension, there's going to be consequences that arise in our life. We see that arise emotionally, mentally. We see it arise physically in our bodies. As a chiropractor, I see this arise every day, and it's my job to discover, where is this dissonance? Now, the beauty of the nervous system is your nervous system is what connects the ethereal you to the physical you. Your thoughts, your emotions, your dreams, your ambitions, these all exist somewhere, and you can tap into them with your nervous system. If I was to take you all through a meditation right now and take you to a very dark space, we would probably elicit an emotional response. And that emotional response is real, even if that meditation or that dreamlike state that we create is not real. And so that starts to impact our lives on a daily basis. It starts to impact our body, because then your nervous system, this is where the psychedelics come in, starts to behave in a pattern. You see that your brain uses about 20% of your body's energy every day, but it only weighs about 3 pounds. So it's an energy hog. So what does it do? It sets up strategies. It puts things in patterns and repetition. Now, you either have patterns that are creating health and function, vitality, and that pattern will create more over time. These are your people that you see that are in their 70s and 80s and have great health, right? What are they doing? They're creating patterns of health and vitality for their entire life. Then you have patterns of dysfunction, disorder, and disease, and when those are left strung on long enough, it's going to hit you at some point in time. You start to manifest these things physically. It's never a lack of a drug. It's never a lack of a surgery. It's never a lack of something from the outside in that heals you. It is always a dissonance that, when corrected from the inside out, gives your body the opportunity to heal, right? Now, we are in the physical reality, and there are limitations of matter, and if you've let things go for too long, we've got beautiful things that can help you get going in the right direction, give you that catalyst. If your hip's obliterated because you haven't taken care of it, you might need a surgery. But what are you going to change after that surgery? If you have something going on systemically, you might need to get your body regulated with some pharmaceuticals. But is that a long-term solution? Or is that simply masking an issue and starting to change the biomarkers to just make it look like you're healthy? Why is it that people with heart disease that get on all of the different heart medications still die from heart disease? What is that? We're not focused on healing, especially in this country. We spend more on pharmaceuticals, more on the medical industrial complex than any other developed country in the world, and we are one of the sickest. Highest in SIDS, cancer's going through the roof, It's so interesting. You travel to some of these other countries where a lot of these sacred medicines come from, and it's simple living. People are happy to see the sky and feel the rain and to just say hello to one another, even if they're living in a hut. It's rather humbling because here we are in this fast-paced society that's go, 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 create, 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 do, 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 that's putting all of our bodies, which are also animals, into this chemical cascade of sympathetic tone that is leaving you stuck in survival mode, whether you feel it or not. You're stuck in survival mode, and if you don't realize that you've got to get yourself out of that survival mode with a variety of different things, whatever resonates with you the most, to get into the creation mode, which is the parasympathetic aspect of your nervous system. This is a regulated nervous system. When you're stuck in fight or flight for too long, disease will manifest. So what am I inspired by? Specifically being here today, and why I brought the Source Chiropractic out here to sponsor this healing booth, is I'm inspired that there's communities like this. I'm inspired to look across this room and to see so many different peoples from different walks of life here to talk about plants, here to talk about psychedelics, here to talk about things that 10 years ago, it was a lot more hush-hush. Now people are asking questions. I have people almost daily in my practice asking, hey doc, what do you know about mushrooms? What do you know about this? What do you know about that? And what does that tell me? It tells me that people are looking for truth. They're looking to expand their mind. They're looking to open their heart. They're looking to heal. So I'm inspired to be a practitioner that's delivering true healing in a world that is tired of big pharma, that's tired of the surgeries, that's tired of the over-medicating, that's tired of the medical industrial complex, and is looking for genuine healing. I'm inspired for the young people that are coming up that look to their parents and their grandparents and they say, yo, all those drugs, no thank you. I want a different answer. I'm inspired that we're alive in a time where the internet does exist. And while everything that can be helpful is also can be detrimental, we can get stuck in this scrolling cycle, but you can also educate yourself so much. We're no longer living in the dark ages where you can't educate yourself on anything and everything you want to know. And that really inspires me because people are waking up. And the powers that be, and all I mean by that is where all the money is. I'm not all getting into the conspiracy shit or whatever, but there's money to be made. There's a reason why every other commercial is trying to get you on a different drug. And as beautiful as the peptide movement is, because that gets to a deeper layer of the core, if you're just looking for a new needle with a new peptide of a different drug and you're still not healing yourself, you'll be stuck in a new trap. Because it has to come from the inside out. Use these things as a catalyst to move you forward, but you have to change the heart, you have to change the mind, you have to create the synergy between the two. When you change your entire being, you will know that you are healing when all of you heals, not when you start to feel better. When you start to think differently, when you start to act differently, when you start to have different habits, when you start to have different desires, ideas, ambitions, dreams, that's when you're healing. That's what gets me jazzed up.
Well said. Thank you, Dr. Dillon. Awesome.
Sorry for being late.
Better late than never. I'm glad you made it. So as we start to wrap things up a little bit, I'd like for everybody to share some parting words on maybe some inspirational stuff that's been prominent in your life, or also how we can connect with you, what your booth is offering today, and how we can connect with you a little bit further at Cannadelic.
Great. So yeah, I loved the panel, loved the discussion. Thanks for that. That was amazing. Yeah,
Thank you.
Agree 100% with everything you just said.
I could feel that when you were talking. I was like, we're on the same page.
Yeah, totally. And I agree in the sense that even in the peptide world, like if it helps them with weight loss initially to get started, right? If they're not doing exercise, if they're not eating right, if they're not doing spiritual behaviors, it doesn't work at all.
100%.
Like in my case, I don't drink, smoke, or drug, and I haven't for about 32 years. It's just my decision. And I just kind of got off on all that. And I found for my spiritual journey to be fulfilled, I have about 15 people that I mentor. And I get nothing from it other than I just kind of impart information to them on how I grow and develop. So I have community. So it's really important to have love and community. And then there are technologies such as supplements or peptides that can help kind of get us from a painful area out of that, and then we can get off of it and move forward. That's kind of where I'm at. So I really appreciate the panel. I appreciate all you guys, and I appreciate the audience. Thank you. Say that, I couldn't hear you the last part.
Once they're available to the public, where would you go?
Right. Well, you'd have to go, right now it's only like doctor's offices. I know they're having a big conference in Orlando where there's physicians that are getting certified in peptides. So if you go online, you can see what they're doing right now. But as far as finding them, I wouldn't know where to find them myself. I just know if I kind of just do some research, you can see a lot of information that's going on with that. I did have something that was interesting that I did find. So there are peptides in agriculture, right? They're using peptides to make plants more drought resistant and more pest resistant, so they don't have to use chemicals and such. And I saw this study where someone took mammalian peptides and started using them on plants. So for example, there's these peptides that do like tanning, right? So they put them in flowering plants. And then there was one where they used for glucose, right? And they put them in a cacti, things of that nature. They used healing peptides to, just make things grow faster, that kind of thing. So if you just kind of do your own research, you'll find that. But if you want to find how to source it right now, it's very limited. The FDA hasn't approved any of it, as far as I know, except for maybe those weight loss shots that you see out there that are legally prescribed. Everything else, it's kind of like where the marijuana industry is and the mushrooms. It's kind of like no go until it goes. Thank you. Yeah. Speak up a little. Yeah, like I'm just doing research. I don't sell it, I don't use it, that kind of thing. But things, anecdotally, what we're talking about, right, is that, everybody has to know their own individual self. You could go to marijuana or you can go to mushrooms and be suicidal. I mean, if you have a certain, condition psychologically, you can be really hurt by taking anything. You have to know yourself. You have to know the practitioners. They want to know your background before they start introducing anything to you. But on the other hand, I've heard of people taking those things and getting off Adderall. So there's the good, there's the bad. You could take, Advil, and then you could get stomach cancer from it. So you can go to any end of the spectrum. But if I were to say any advice, which I'm not giving, it would be that the individual has to know themselves. And I just think it's interesting for us to just study it and see what happens. Right, the long-term implications, it's all new, so we'll see what happens. Yeah, and like I said, I had read also where people had bad reactions to that. But on the other hand, then they started emerging it for sleep apnea or for alcoholism. So there's all these positives and negatives. It's just navigating through it. It's all so new. But I'd love to talk to you after if you're around. Thanks for the questions. Thank you. Anyone else? Like, big hand for our panel today.
I want to thank you guys very much. If you guys want to get more information, we have a booth outside. This panel was very, very important for me. Many of you may know I've undergone probably about 10 surgeries in the last 6-7 years, 4 in the last year and a half. Major back surgeries, need another neck surgery.
No, you don't. Come hit me up.
And
I'm not kidding.
The mind, body, spirit is a very important thing. But what was said today by Dylan, all the things that you're going to learn about today are tools. These are tools, but doing the work that goes along with it is what's very instrumental. And there is a real connection between the mind and the body. And when we give our mind an opportunity to rest and be able to relax, there's amazing things that we can do with our nervous system and our body to heal. So thank you guys very much. We'll be talking a little bit more all day today about other modalities. We're going to be, our next panel today is on science and sacred medicine and the integration with that. But thank you guys very much. And if you guys have any questions for our panel, they'll be here all day.
Thank you.
I have ankylosing spondylosis, so I have bone growth.
Ankylosing spondylosis.
It's my neck. I'll talk to you.
Okay.
But yeah.
Definitely talk to my team. My
Yeah.
wife's actually going into labor right now.
I heard. Congratulations. Oh. Yeah, his wife's in labor.
So, I don't know if you live locally or not, but I own the 48-unit energy enhancement system here in Torrance Springs. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
What it is a scalar and biophotonic energy waves. It's a quantum energy analyzer.
Yeah, I've talked to you. Most definitely. I'm here all day. So. Thanks, Christian.
I wasn't sure.
We got some FaceTime.
I was throwing a little bit.
You're good. I got you later on today, too.
I must be in the right place. My assignments up here.
We got to stay connected because I'd love to learn more and I can tell you real about it.
It's not comfortable.
Check. 1, 2. Check. Check. 1, 2. Check. 1, 1. Check. 1, 2. Check. 1, 2. Check. 1, 2.
So I take the
Brian, great job. I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you. Thank you.
Check. 1, 2.
Oh, beautiful. Could you do me a favor and leave it right on my table in the back corner there?
Yes, I have my card and some information about the center.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I'll be here all day.
Where's the VIP like lounge gonna be at?
I believe it's going to be upstairs. Yeah.
Get the bags and stuff in at that time.
Yeah. You'll get you got VIP passes.
Yeah. I wasn't really too sure what the difference.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure we get pictures on, so I figured something had to be different.
Yeah, you get passes. There's going to be a dinner later, you know. Yeah, so
Awesome. Well, I'll see you around. I
we
will
just
leave
got to a
this up
slow
there for
start.
you. I figured so. It's just the beginning of things, but
Oh, yeah.
I will I'll leave this up there for you, and hopefully we'll stop again.
Definitely. So nice to meet you. Yeah, I have 2 stores in Valrico and Riverview.
Oh, awesome. Okay, wonderful. Yeah, and that we do is just on another level.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Excellent.
everyone comes in and feels better.
This is
Sure.
science meets sacred medicine. Yeah.
with the physical aspect, what are some of the things that you would say to your clients and to your friends and even to the people here? What for you created that connection with fitness and, psychedelic experience and that spiritual awareness? Like, what was your experience and how you came about?
Yeah, so really what it comes down to is understanding your own body, understanding the needs of your own body from a physical fitness standpoint, from a nutritional standpoint, from a flexibility standpoint, from a strength standpoint. It all kind of collaborates to making you feel the healthiest version of yourself. And we can all determine for ourselves what that is. For me, that's I want to be strong, I want to be flexible, I want to have endurance. So I'm able to look at the things in my life to optimize those, to give me those best performances. And when I'm working with my clients, I use the mind to center themselves on what their goals are, focus 100% on what that goal is that they want to achieve. Do you want to bench your body weight? Do you want to run a mile in under 10 minutes? What is it that you want to achieve? And set your mind to that completely, and you will achieve it.
And with that, Dr. Cheryl, I'll kind of pass it to you. So with using breath work and then advancing to the ketamine that you had talked about, I guess more of a direct question that I have here is, can you dive into the psychological changes that occur during these ketamine sessions? And then how do these changes contribute to both the physical and spiritual healing of people?
So I think the ketamine, I think of it as sort of a gateway, not a gateway drug like we talk about, but it's a gateway to your own psyche and spirituality. So the patient or the person that's there in front of you can really work on their inner healer. And that's what's important. I can't tell what's best for them. I don't live in their life and walk in their shoes. So really having them do some breath work and understand where their issues are coming from, whether it's depression or overeating or addiction. Where is that coming from? Was it a bad childhood experience? Was it a work experience? And then the ketamine just helps them be a little bit more gracious to themselves so that they can understand, I'm not a bad person. I am just a reaction to my environment, and here's how I can change how I react to that environment, because you are what happens to you, but then what you do with it is how you come through it and get stronger. So I think the ketamine and the breath work just sort of open you up to those states. MDMA is another one that's fantastic for helping people have empathy for themselves instead of sitting there and judging and going down that negative behavioral spiral. Really having these other tools available besides an SSRI. So the medications just numb those experiences, and then people can't get back to the root of the problem. They just take a medicine, they're numb to everything, they're not happy, they're not sad. We want people to feel and experience emotions and understand where those emotions come from. So I think the breathwork and the medications help with that.
And I think for a lot of people, like myself, I've been here even just 2 years ago. I was like, I want a quick fix. Like, I just want to fix it. I finally came to the awareness spot of where I was just like, I don't feel good. I want to have joy in my life. I'm extremely depressed. How the hell do I do that? And where do I even go? So I'm kind of going to go a little off topic here and just ask you individually, what was the first technique, or what was the first thing where you were just like, this caused a mind shift inside of me that gave me the fuel, the ignition to be like, this is how I'm going to change? For a lot of people, that's psilocybin. A lot of people, that's breath work. For people, it's like, I went and had a tarot card reading and my life completely changed. You have those moments where the universe falls into your lap. So for me, that was magic mushrooms. I had a guide in South Africa and she rocked me to my core, and I was just like, holy shit, what is life? And then from there, it went to, different avenues. I started following down the rabbit hole. So a long-winded question is, what was that thing for you, John? Dr. Cheryl, Kristen, Alex, and then we'll continue from there.
So there were a number of times over my transformational experience where I could answer that question with an example from it. But when I had my experience, it was from October to November of 2022, and that was really the core of my transformation, what got me out of my shit and on to the next level. But for about a year, I was trying to figure out exactly what that meant. I was looking for employment in the psychedelic space. I was looking into different things that I could do where I felt like I was making an impact for people. It didn't quite have to be in the psychedelic space, but I wanted to make sure that I felt like what I was doing made a difference for people. Anyway, fast forward to the start of this year, I started a new job. I was working with personal injury attorneys. I don't need to tell any of y'all about what the business of personal injury attorneys is like, but pretty soul-sucking. It does not give you that sense of fulfillment.
What do you mean?
Anyway, so fast forward to a February night, and I was playing pickleball with one of my best friends. He could sense that my mind wasn't on the game. I was stressed. So we decided to get dinner at a local restaurant. We get dinner. We talk about life. He's a spiritual person. He's a very grounded person. He's gone through a lot of stuff in his life. We had a really present conversation. I hopped on my bike. I wanted to bike back home. Instead of turning left into my apartment complex, something told me, stay out. You gotta stay out. You gotta figure out what's going on in your head. So instead of turning left into my apartment complex, I turned right. I went down to the St. Petersburg Pier. I biked all the way down to the St. Petersburg Pier, and as I got down to the end there, I broke down crying. And all the emotion of the day, of the stress of the job, of not being in alignment with my true self came to me. After that, I biked back up to the front of the pier. There's a lawn in front of Teak, the restaurant out there. I looked up at the stars and I had a connection with God. And my connection with God, he told me, follow what you know is right for yourself. Follow your passions. And my passions have always been fitness. My passions have always been helping other people bring out the best versions of themselves. So from that moment forward, I decided to quit my job. I decided to go towards the things that I want in life. And it's been an amazing experience ever since.
Isn't it amazing how when you take the time, and this is something that really resonated for me when I first we say the word journey, but when I first started this journey, was taking the time to be silent and actually listen. And I can even assume with breath work, you have to put yourself into this place where you are silent, because we already have all the answers inside of us. And so when you're in that place to receive, that's where you can go. That's where the magic happens. And so I'd love to hear your story, Dr. Cheryl.
Well, the first time I took any substance, I realized I was pain-free a couple hours into my journey. And I didn't know how much pain I had until I took this, it was psilocybin, and I could move, and I had good range of motion, and I didn't have pain every step. It was incredible. And fast forward, I volunteer with a combat wounded veteran challenge group that we teach adaptive scuba diving for people with amputations, PTSD, TBI, and it's an amazing group of people. But
how cool you are.
No, they're cool. They're the cool ones. I'm just lucky. But these guys are amazing, and they're slugging scuba tanks around, and they're on their double amputations and diving and getting over what would be crippling to a lot of people. Some of these guys have a really tough road ahead of them with spinal cord injuries and in a wheelchair the rest of their life. So looking at that from inspiration and talking to them and saying, how do you get through your day? And the answer was THC, psilocybin. And so I'm a believer, and I'm not a believer in the medications that modern medicine uses. I think we're failing a lot of people, and there's got to be a better way. So that's what drove me down this path, and it's so rewarding, and I feel like I'm still learning as well. It's great to be here.
For you, Kristen.
Okay, well, the first thing that popped into my mind was a memory I have that was about 20 years ago. Some of you may have heard the thing about redheads having tempers, and it was true. I was really, a lot of times, overreacting because I was so sensitive. That was before I learned anything about healthy boundaries. And I was carrying too much weight, and I didn't know how to set boundaries. So then I would get angry a lot. So I found myself one day at work, the place I was working was not living up to my expectations, and I started to go into, like an angry story about it. And by now, I had been practicing Buddhism for a while. I've been meditating a long time. And the thought popped into my head, oh, you could apply compassion, novel concept. And it just was like, I can think about this in a different way. I can say, maybe, just maybe, They're doing the best they can do. This is it. This is what they got. They don't have more. They don't have it the way you want it. What they're delivering is what they are able to do with the resources, time, money, effort, whatever. And that was, it led to so much more peace, for me to be able to accept where they were. And that kind of theme has run through. The other thing for me with the compassion is where it ties back to like the microdosing for me is it's been easier for me as an empath, wired that way, to be compassionate for others than to be compassionate with myself at times. So the way mushrooms, the way the psychedelic world came to me was about 3 years ago. And interestingly enough, it came out of my baking bowl of belief. One of the decks that I use when I do readings is all nature cards. And this card started popping up, and I met someone that was a microdoser. And I had always had sort of, I wouldn't call it full-scale depression, but definitely I would call it ennui or melancholy. And I had tried, the SSRIs, and I had tried anti-anxiety medications, and both of those sort of put me into bad places. The antidepressants made me aggressive, and the anti-anxiety medication made me feel numb. And as a meditator, I already knew like what my sweet spot was. It's like I know when I feel good and when my brain is working right. So in the last few years, I've been able to cultivate more compassion for myself with ancient trauma. And because I'm tapped into my dreams a lot in the psychic world, like the mystery of things has been revealed to me through dreams and stuff like that. The issues or places in my life where things happened where maybe I didn't really feel my feelings, through that time. I also remember a conversation with my, very venerable teacher a few years ago. I think it was 2018 or 2019. And she said, remember, you need to be compassionate with yourself. And so the sort of application of compassion for me expanded to, like, whenever I would start to feel frustrated or angry or worked up or, whatever, starting to lose the cool, I would say to myself, okay, if you get yourself worked up energetically, you're not going to be able to think, and you're not going to be able to solve the problem, because I learned to stay in my parasympathetic instead of popping into the sympathetic nervous system. So now I can kind of leverage my awareness of that, and if I notice that I'm going, I can't do it all the time, of course no one can, but I notice it more and more and more of the time. So my regular state now that I go around in a lot is close sometimes to like a psychedelic state, frankly. I'm a plant communicator. I'm vibing with the energy of the universe just more of the time, all the time. And what's happened with my microdosing journey is that it is, I feel like it's sort of the law of diminishing returns, so I'm just watching to see, and I may be switching over to like the supplemental strategy pretty soon, because I really feel, at 60, it's my biochemistry that needs the support more than my spiritual realm or my psychology at this point. I've sort of done some deep housekeeping in the psychology zone, and now it's really the biochemical support that I probably need, going forward.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. It really is. It's a mind, body, spirit connection. And if one of them is not balanced, the other ones they kind of get on overload. And while I was listening to you speak, Kristen, have you guys seen or heard of the movie Inside Out? You guys know what I'm talking about? If you haven't seen the nude, it's old. She's on a hockey team. I'm giving you context here. I'm not a Pixar Disney advocate, so I just really enjoyed the movie. But please go watch it if you have the opportunity to. But essentially, inside of her mind are all of these animated figures of her emotions. So you have joy, you have sadness, right? And you have fear and disgust and so forth. Well, she hits puberty. And so all of these new complex emotions come, and one of them is anxiety. And so anxiety at first starts out really cool in the brain, and it's just like, oh, I'm gonna watch out for you. Like, we're gonna protect you. We're gonna send you an image inside of Riley's brain so that, in case she falls on the hockey team, she'll do this. So it started out really good. And then slowly anxiety started to take over Riley's life. And joy and sadness and all of her core emotions, her core being, were projected into the back of her subconscious. I mean, it's a fantastic movie, but then anxiety took over. And anxiety showed up in a lot of different ways in Riley's life that I feel like we all can relate to on a day-to-day basis, whether that's we first wake up in the morning and our heart is pounding and we're like, I just had 8 hours of sleep. Why is my heart pounding? Well, you probably just need to take a few deep breaths. It's probably nothing, even though our mind's going 90 miles of nothing. And then, if we continue to allow that thought, allow anxiety to ripple, it's just going to take over your day. It's going to take over your mind. There's no quietness. How can you work out if you're frozen? How can you access this beautiful world that is always around us if we're just constantly in our mind? How can we do it if our bodies are not nourished? And so I just appreciate you sharing. But Alex, I would love to hear, kind of your spiritual journey and how it brought you to Beef Organs and nourishment, and how that too kind of goes along with the spiritual world.
It's kind of a long story, but I moved to Tulum, Mexico in 2020, right before the pandemic hit. And while I was there, Mexico never really shut down. But so I ended up having, it was the first time in my life I was single, and there were these things coming up inside of me, like I would just notice, I would go through my days and I felt nothing. I didn't feel joy, I didn't feel sadness, I didn't even feel content. I just was very numb. And I ended up on some random thread, as you do in Tulum, and on WhatsApp, and they put out for an ayahuasca ceremony, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna do that. And so
I didn't know what it was, right?
I mean, I had so little awareness about what ayahuasca was that I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that. That's gonna be me. And I knew that it was, eye-opening and spiritual to a point, but I'm from Oklahoma. We have no idea. So I sign up for it. I totally forget about it. And then I get a text message the day before, and they're like, hey, can you give this other girl a ride to the ceremony? I was like, oh, crap. I totally forgot about that, but yes, of course. So we get in the car. We're on our way there. We get lost in the middle of the woods. In Mexico. And we go to it's a dead-end road in the middle of the jungle, and we get out of the car, and this girl was like, oh, the aliens are supposed to be so active tonight. And I was like,
yes, they are.
Oklahoma. And I was sitting back, and I was like, oh, okay. And so she's like, let's just get out and look at the sky, see if we see them. I was like, perfect, let's do it. I kid you not, we get out, and there are like lights moving around in these oblong shapes, and I was like, oh no. So then we finally make it. I have my ayahuasca experience. It's beautiful. I'm rocking back and forth, and I'm like, how long has it been since I have felt anything? And during that time, I had no idea what dissociation was. I'd never been to therapy. Oklahoma. So I finally, that's like sort of what broke me in that moment. So I proceeded through my time in Tulum, and I ended up having a grand mal seizure in the middle of Mexico and was hospitalized for 4 days, almost died, the whole thing. And I was like, shit, what is this? What is going on? I'm 26? I was 26 years old. Bodybuilding. Thought my life was perfect. Drove a motorcycle, I was like, I'm living the dream, And so that really sent me on a spiritual path, because I thought I was doing everything right. I had abs, I was working out. My body's
Just an
perfect.
ayahuasca.
My life is perfect. I'm a software engineer. I make tons of money, everything's perfect. And that really like sent me on my way. So I went on multiple mushroom journeys, and they were very dark and very intense. It was like me meeting my dissociation. And looking back now that I own a beef organ supplement company, and out of all of that, was that I was undernourished. I truly, like, I was so deprived trying to meet the societal standards that have been imposed on me that I was like, you know, yeah, whatever. And so since I have come to the realization, and a lot like you, I wake up every day feeling euphoric. You know, like after changing my diet and reaching for the plant medicine, like bringing awareness to what I was doing through plant medicine, and then moving into this space where I'm nourished. I mean, I can't even explain to you guys. I've met with a girl who buys our supplements. She's like our #1 fan. We just launched in January, and she bought in March, and we were in March like, what are we doing? Are we gonna make it? You know? And so she was like one of the first customers to buy and post about us. So we went and had coffee with her, talked to her like 5 hours yesterday. And she just told us, she was like, I feel so euphoric. Like I feel amazing when I wake up. And I was like, yes, it's totally insane, right? And she was like, yes. And so that is like my introduction to plant medicine, and that for me is like the progression of where it can take you, you know, like the combination of being nourished and plant medicine. At Humanimal, we do focus on like 2 pillars. It's nourishment, nourish yourself, and see yourself. And so nourish yourself is, you know, eating the nutrient-dense foods, paying attention to what you put in your body because it creates who you are and how you show up. And then seeing yourself is the psychedelics, it's the breath work, it's the meditation, it's everything that goes into bringing the awareness to who you are and where you want to be and doing that thing. Yeah.
I think and thank you for sharing that. I think what people forget sometimes, and I think that's what's so beautiful about remembering who you are and the experiences that you have in life, because you go to Bali to, I'm sure, have a really good time, but it's like in those moments, you're bawling your eyes out on a pier, on a bike, and you're just looking up and you're like, this is it, you know? Or you're helping somebody and they smile and they give you a hug and they go, oh my gosh, this is the moment. And I think what's amazing with all of that is you can find that moment. It's there for you all the time. You just got to take time to listen.
And I think something, you know, just to like tie this in, this whole panel has been about science. You know, science and spirituality are the same thing. We used to wonder what gave us energy, and then all of a sudden, and it was mystical, right? We would eat liver, which is super rich in B12, and we would be like through the roof excited. We're like, oh, this is God. You know, this is mystical, this is spiritual. And then science came in and discovered B12. So we already know what science is just now experiencing. And part of the journey is learning to accept that the ancient wisdom and the ancient knowledge has already told you what you need to know.
My last question would be, Alex, and I'll ask you guys a last question, and then we'll take some time to answer any questions that you guys may have and, you know, go forth with that. But how, with our products, how would you say you put ancient wisdom and modern medicine into the beef organs? And tell them a little bit about like the psychedelic support as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, exactly what I just said. We look to modern science to confirm what we've already known from ancient wisdom. And then we take that and we look back into the ancient times. We look back to cultures. What did you use? What did you eat? You know, how did you use it? And, you know, I'm heavy in psychedelics, you know. I just need everybody to know a lot of people have used psychedelics for a really long time. And so it's the same thing with organ meats. We have eaten organ meats since the beginning of time. And so we have used this principle, and we're putting out a psychedelic support supplement at the end of this year in October. It's whole foods. It's a pre and post psychedelic experience protocol, or you can take it daily if you microdose. It's not adaptogen. it's not, it's not an adaptogen. It's just whole food, and it just supports the nourishment so that your nervous system is in the perfect place to have your psychedelic experiences. What was the rest of the question? Did I answer it? You answered it. Excellent. Perfect. I'm done.
Kristen, my last question for you would be, if somebody wanted to, I'm trying to think how the best way to phrase this, because for me, I'm just so captivated by you and just you as a human being. I think you're wonderful. Would be if somebody started on this path to finding the mysticalness. Some people find the fitness, some people find the body, or they find the nourishment first. If they were to find the spiritual part of it first, what advice would you give to them? And then what tips and tricks, or you see what I'm saying? Like, how would you kind of meet them? Because with fitness, you can be like, well, let's talk about your goals. With breath work, let's practice these things. With nourishment, let's change our diet. So in your realm, what would be that advice you would give somebody to start?
Right. Well, usually when I work with mostly one-on-one in small groups of people. And everyone has a way already that they connect to spirit. Okay, there's some kind of way. I mean, people are doing it. They might do it when they're walking or moving. They might do it in a traditional way. They could go into a cathedral and connect. They could be meditators. They could be yoga people. I basically just help people tune in to a larger extent to what they're already doing, because everybody's connecting. They're just not always aware that they're connecting. And then I created actually something I call a 5-frequency wellness check, so that people can sort of be tapping in on a regular basis to kind of, okay, how are things going in the different areas? And when we do, like, mostly you'll hear body, mind, spirit, I kind of expanded that category since that's my mojo zone, So I like to talk to people about their spirit or soul energy process, as well as how they're connecting in this lifetime to the great beyond, the great mystery. So in my wellness system, we have a place for body, emotions, intellectual life, spirit, soul journey, and I call it mastermind, and I call this B-ism. Okay, so that way you can remember, okay, how's my physical? How's that going? How are my emotions? Okay, my heart center. What's going on up here? What's going on here in my spirit soul, which might be connected to your heart and some of this, and what's going on way up there? And people can start to figure that out. I mean, I've even talked with people that actually have memories of past lifetimes. Sometimes they don't, but many people, more people than you might imagine, really do. And then sometimes the patterns that are really entrenched in people that are challenging to shift are coming from those prior lifetimes. They're bringing something in, or things are coming in on the DNA spiral. So when I work with people deeply, like if a person is, my specialty is what I call leaders, healers, and seers. I work a lot with people who are spiritually emergent, who are moving from their ordinary way they were thinking they were living until now living in alignment and on purpose. And that is a journey, because you're having to sort through what fits for me now, what doesn't fit for me anymore. And a lot of times there's some stuff, some trauma from this lifetime that needs to be cleared up to get to that place where you're really thriving in that new sense of who you are, that new identity. So that's when I use that theta healing. The theta healing is, I describe it as a combination of cognitive behavioral therapy, prayer, affirmative prayer, hypnosis, and Reiki energy. So I'm not trained, my energy thing comes from my own personal Vajrayana Buddhist practice, but it's like that. And it's very, very, it's scientific, but it's very subtle, okay? It's super subtle. And I created, I do something called intuitive anatomy, where there's actually a connection between how all the different systems of your body are working and your beliefs, and how that's outpicturing in the way you live. So it's like, yeah, I'm up there in the woo, but I'm always bringing the body back into it. And actually, that because the body is the training ground for being energy sensitive. Okay, when you start to really understand what's going on with your body, you have the opportunity then to get into the subtler levels of energy that psychics and energy work type people heal. So, feel and deal with. So, yeah.
I love it. And Dr. Cheryl, my question to you would be is, when people come, they find you, there's a sense of openness, right? There's a sense of education. So kind of a very similar question is, what advice would you give people who are interested in breath work, who are interested in ketamine? How would you, since they've become open, what advice would you give to them with starting out?
Well, one of the things that you've heard from this panel is it's not just your mental health, it's your physical health, it's your relationships, it's what you commit and what you tell yourself every day when you get out of bed. And it's how you decide to face the world every day, and eating right and just nourishing your body and your soul and taking the time to do that. How many of you this morning took time to just go outside and greet the sun and appreciate nature? Anybody? Yeah. Okay, good. A few people, somebody biked here, so. But, taking the time to do that and just be good to yourself. And then that's a big step for a lot of people, just having some natural sunshine in your day lifts your mood incredibly. And then also committing to the work, because it is a lot of work. It's not always comfortable, and just warning them up front that this is a journey and we're going to work through it, and there's work to be done, but you have to make a commitment. Don't half-ass it. If you're going to go through this, really do it right and get what you can out of the medicine, out of the practices, and develop the discipline to have good habits and work on this yourself. Otherwise, you're spending money and you're not going to find what you're looking for.
And you're worth it. Everybody's
Absolutely.
worth it. And so same question to you, John.
Yeah, Cheryl, I think the thing that you touch on completely there is something that I really preach, and that's the decision to be. From the moment that you decide to be who you want to be, to make the choices that you want to make, it's from that point forward that you've created your new life. So the decision to be someone that practices breathwork, that takes that extra time, the decision to be someone that wakes up in the morning and goes for a run, the decision to be someone that makes the right choices with their nutrition, put the right foods in their body, it all comes back to that single decision point. And as soon as you've made that commitment to yourself, that decision to be, everything else will fall in line.
I love it. And so before we do questions to everybody, John, how can people find you? How can they learn more about you? And where are you going to be after this?
Yeah, well, so I'll actually pass around my book. I don't know if it's going to get enough time to make it around, but there's going to be a QR code in the front page, and then also my business card with link to my Instagram. I'll pass that.
And we are just outside by, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, if it doesn't make it to you, Johnny B on Instagram, JohnnieBe.
And you're going to be around here today too, so people can come and stop you as well.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent. All right, Dr. Cheryl, where can we find you?
Sorry about that. So we are out in the front just next to the entrance. We have a tent. When you get the munchies later, we have s'mores that you can cook over a little fake fire. And we are located off Pasadena Avenue, just down the street, about 10 minutes is our clinic. So come find us, hang out, have some matcha and some s'mores.
What about you, Chris?
So I call myself mindful seer, but everybody can be a mindful seer. It's not about me, it's about everybody. And so my website is mindfulseer.com. I'm in a booth upstairs on the mezzanine. I am offering the 5-frequency wellness check today for anybody who's down for that, or theta healing. I have some cards to offer a special 1-hour opportunity to anybody that's here today, if you would like that. If you can't do it today, this is a follow-up opportunity. And I just wanted to share one more thing that popped out of the baking bowl. The magician card was coming out. I'm always interested to see what just spontaneously occurs. And when I was searching through to find the fungus card, the magician card also came out. So we are all working magic, here today.
Yes, we are. And Alex, how can we find out about Humanimal?
First of all, I love that, the magician card. Let's go. Okay, we're going to be around all day today. We have some flyers that lead straight to our psychedelic support mailing list, so you can sign up I think we have a special offer, and if we don't, then we can
We're gonna
figure
give
it
you one
out.
today.
Just come talk to us. Our goal is to have 1 million conversations. So yeah, we're going to be walking around all day. We don't have a booth, but we're going to be here hanging out. So please, if anybody's interested, come continue this conversation with us.
And if you wanna
because
find- yeah, and
we
if-
love it. And if you want to find us, we have an Instagram, shophumanimal.com. It's HUM animal. And, yeah,
You can go
and
to
then
our
shop.
website's the same.
Oh, that's the website and the handle. Just take off the .com, for Instagram.
All right, I think we have just a couple more minutes for some questions, right?
Yeah, if anybody has a question, please raise your hand. I'll bring you the mic.
Thank all of you. This has been really insightful, enlightening, inspiring. This question is for you, Alex. What are you telling all the vegetarians who come knock on your door?
Oh man. I want you to know that at least 15% of our dedicated customers are vegetarian or vegan. And it is because they have either hit a wall with their health, and they are looking for something that is the most ethical and most nutrient-dense option that they can incorporate without having to actually eat the meat. So something about our sourcing is we source from New Zealand. They are grass-fed and grass-finished. They've never seen a factory farm life, and they never will. They have one bad day, we say. And we pride ourselves on, providing energetically and vibrationally a happy and healthy animal to be consumed. And we do that with all of our products. Our psychedelic support isn't all animal-based, but we take sourcing and ethical sourcing very seriously. And so that is what, with vegetarians and vegans, if it's a moral thing, that's usually what we tell them. If it's not a moral thing, I always say it's the easiest way to start, and it's the easiest way to get this nutrition and nourishment that you need without actually having to eat the meat. Wonderful question.
Hi, I'm Saith. I'm curious, I know we're all kind of going back to East and we don't want Western, what we have in front of us. We even have breakdowns about how we live in this society, in the city plan or whatever it is, when I think when we have an awakening that brings us back to our origin, our source in the quantum or the matrix or how we see it, how we made our lives. But what do each of you think, or who wants to respond, is the most erroneous precedent or erroneous modality that continues today in Western medicine?
I'll jump in with that one. Erroneous, I think there is a place for Western medicine, and there's a place for medicine, true medicine, developed with standards by a drug company, gone through a rigorous process of approval. But I think erroneously, we think a pill is always the answer. It's going to make me skinny, it's going to make me beautiful, it's going to make me smarter. And I think that's a myth. That is an urban myth. You have to find that beauty and that intensity within. And you can't always just push the easy button. You got to put in the work. And so I think that's a fallacy of modern medicine. And we as consumers, we're marketed to, we see the commercials, what's going to make me happy today. And a lot of us are afraid to do the work or just too busy and not committed. So I think that's the flaw of modern medicine, Western medicine.
And I'm here today because I do not want to see the psychedelic community fall into that mindset. I do not want people to think, oh, I can just microdose and it's going to be cool. I'm here to support people who are using, psychedelics to integrate what comes up while they're having these experiences. And if you're a microdoser, you can be popping up stuff from down under. It's not like you have somebody right there with you all the time, like when you're doing a shamanic journeying. And so I felt compelled, like I felt directed by the matrix to get my butt out here, when this fungus card started popping up, in about 3 years ago. And then, sometimes it takes a while for the universe to line things up.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on that same train. Nourishment is the foundation, and that's what we believe, in which you are able to self-expand. And when you say self-expansion, it is all about you. It's all about your decisions and your choices to continue to act in alignment with who you are and what it is that you feel connected to.
Exactly. John, did you have a last thing as well? And we'll wrap up.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney. So one of the biggest things is that, like we've all said, there's so much out there that we can rely on. But at the end of the day, the only thing that you can really rely on is yourself. And no matter if it's plant medicines, if it's pharmaceutical drugs, what have you, the core is finding that strength within yourself to be that best version of yourself and to actively choose to be that on a daily basis. And so that's one of the biggest things that I learned through my psilocybin journey, was that for the first month of it, I had an incredibly transformational experience. And for about a year after that, I was leaning on that, using medium dose psilocybin, about 1.5 grams on a week or every other week kind of basis, trying to elicit more positive change for myself, trying to get myself to that next level in my life. When really, it all existed within myself. And that's what the power was throughout that month transformation, is that I decided to make the changes that were going to move me forward. And that's what we all need to do, is just find that strength within ourselves, regardless of what the modality is, to be that best version.
Amazing. Tom, I think
All
we're
right,
ready.
any other questions? No? Well, I'd like to thank you guys, all of you today. I heard a lot of really interesting things about how we move past, from our audience, who here has had an awakening or an experience with psychedelics that has changed your perspective? Show of hands. Show of hands. As you may know, that becomes a very confusing thing to many people. And I like to always point in that the work is very important in your journey. So by being able to do physical activity, by being able to have somebody to guide you through the process is a very important thing. So when you're thinking about using psychedelics in your journey as a tool, these other tools such as exercise, such as microdosing coaches, these are very important to bring into it. And we are finding that science is backing up what we anecdotally have found, which we're healing on the cellular level. We have research projects that are going on right now that are testing DNA before and after meditation retreats. We're testing DNA after ayahuasca retreats and seeing how that changes our ability to use mitochondria and the ATP and the energy that is in our cells to actually heal us from the inside. So thank you guys all very much. I really appreciate you. And if you guys have any other questions for them, like they mentioned, they'll be here today. Or if you have any questions for me as we go into our next panel. But this segues really, really well from our previous panel on biohacking and how people are looking at using these tools to be able to help to retrain your body to stop responding and choose the reactions that you're able to have. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I want to talk to you a lot. So our next panel today, we have it's not a panel. This is our keynote speaker, and he's a good friend of mine, and we've been working for the last 10 years on everything from legalizing to decriminalizing ethnobotanicals, cannabis, and let me get this picture in here. Because the archaic laws, thank you guys, thank you. The archaic laws that have been in existence in our country and all around the world have prevented many individuals from seeking the use of these tools, whether they're psychoactives or psychedelics. One of the most widely used psychoactives in the world is caffeine, and we have no problem using that. And we used to compare that to the use of cannabis or THC. So when we first started, cannabis was illegal in our state of Florida. Now we do have a medical program here. And our keynote speaker, I thought I saw him in the back, Mike Minardi, is going to be here today and talk about what we're doing on a state level, on a local level, to not only change the laws, but to help decriminalize the activities that healers are using in this space currently. Mike, are you around? Where'd you go? He went to the bathroom? All right, so I'll fill some space for him until he gets here. But Mike Minardi, he headed up Regulate Florida. I don't know if you remember Regulate Florida, but that was an initiative to help to legalize medical or adult use cannabis here in Florida. He's worked extensively on Amendment 2 for the last, in 2014 and 2016, to help to change the medical marijuana laws. He's at the forefront of psychedelics as well as ethnobotanicals and how we can change the laws and change the rules that exist today from either our local standpoint, our state standpoint, as well as our federal standpoint. And with that being said, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce my good friend, Mike Minardi.
Hello, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here at Cannadelic, the true Cannadelic, and thank you very much, Pete, for throwing this and doing these wonderful events and bringing education and evolution to the society here in this country and Florida. Just waiting here. So if you don't know me, my name is Michael Minardi. I'm an attorney in the state of Florida. I've been practicing for about 20 years now, 22 years now actually, kind of, you know, never want to admit your age sometimes, right? But we embrace it and we love it. I became an attorney, you know, really to legalize cannabis, psychedelics, and as we move forward, I think the evolution comes to the case for legalization of drugs. We are in a time where this world and this country is absolutely insane. We are bleeding money, everyone is struggling, and it's time for a paradigm shift. And I hope that this can educate you and illuminate you on why it's time for a change and why we need to come together for this movement. So again, Michael Minardi, we have a Deep in Nature retreat. You know, I definitely support psychedelics. We're honored to host BioBloom at our place. They are great, but we 100% support, you know, evolution of the mind and soul, and I don't believe under any circumstances our government should control us in that. We also sell plants, so we also have a nursery. We grow hemp plants, so if you ever want to get a hemp license for your home, you can do it. Let's find out how, and you can start cultivating hemp. But we're really about nature, about kind of getting back to this evolution of humanity and, you know, sort of a more back to nature, back to community is exactly what they were talking about. You know, we are all connected and we got to realize that more and more. So the Declaration of Independence declares that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So that was the foundation of how this country became. And that, I think, is what we have to get back to, our constitutional principles. And the Ninth Amendment says the enumeration in their Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed or denied or disparage others retained by the people. That means that the government should not be able to take away these rights that are endowed in us by our Creator, whoever that may be to you. The bottom line is we're put here or we're here for some reason. But whatever you believe in, you should have those rights. These are human rights. These are human nature rights that I believe in. And honestly, the first time I kind of started regaining this thought was studying with my son. It was like his 6th or 7th grade history book. And they were talking about, like, you know, the history of the Constitution and the founders and how they believed that nature was always free. Nature was always a right of the people. And so I thought it was very interesting what they were being taught, you know, in 7th grade compared to the reality of where we are today. So these are the principles that I espouse. I'm fighting, and I'm going to be starting to fight this stuff legally on this. But let's talk about the failure of the drug war, right? Because that's really, why we're here, why we have people's lives destroyed, why we have people arrested. Arrests in the United States have increased 171% from 1980 to 2018. And I can tell you, when we had a private prison contract here up for the legislature in Florida, the contract required a 91% occupancy rate. So it's like, we have to guarantee we're going to fill those jails for you, or we're going to pay you anyway. So, and those are things that are going on constantly and consistently. The ACLU reports we spend over $47 billion, we wish $47, right? Annually on the war on drugs. We could, fund Ukraine with this. Not that we want to. So since the war on drugs started in the 1970s, the US government has spent over $1 trillion on the drug war, on incarceration, on law enforcement, on destroying people's lives and their communities and their families. This is an interesting graph I put together because I think we have to have the reality of it, right? We're in a situation where everyone's like, opiate deaths, they're destroying the world, they're so bad, and drugging is so bad, it's having a huge impact on our society. But the question is it really? And I don't think so. My position is it does not. Look at this. Alcohol, 95,000. That doesn't change. Tobacco, something I was touched by. My mom died in 2002 of lung cancer. 480,000 people a year. And we're not putting that cat in the bag. Healthcare infections. So these are, and I throw this in there because I just think it's a crazy statistic. Because look at it. It's almost the same amount of people that die from drug overdoses. So what healthcare infections are when you go to the hospital and you get a disease while you're there. From the hospital. You don't, and you die. The same amount as drug overdoses. I've never seen a report on that in the media. Anybody? You seen a report on that? No. Hypocrisy. And one of my favorite songs for a lot of this stuff is Violent Femmes, America is the Home of the Hypocrite. And obesity, diabetes, and it's just an issue. I am personally of the opinion that now our doctors have to start with, instead of a pill, a prescription for eating right, for exercising, for doing things differently, because I do believe that we can avoid a lot of these situations and issues. And now when we look at drug overdose deaths, 70% of those, 7 out of 10 people, are opiates. And I don't even know if I consider that a legal drug. Is it? It's given to us by the pharmaceutical companies. It's not necessarily like cocaine or heroin or any of those. It's one that is prescribed, created by the pharmaceutical companies who have now spent billions of dollars in lawsuits against them because what did they do? They hid, hold on, common theme with tobacco. They hid the fact that they knew it was addictive. So Ohio, lawsuits have destroyed them. But you know what? In Ohio, I think it was a $21 billion or something lawsuit. The fourth quarter of 2019, 2020, when COVID hit, GW Pharmaceuticals made that much in that quarter alone. So what did that do to them, a $21 billion lawsuit? Now we're talking about the real stuff, right? Tobacco, alcohol, and illegal drugs. What's that breakdown? Cocaine, 5,800 people. 5,800 people died from cocaine. Is that a serious epidemic that we have to lock up people and destroy people's lives for? Heroin, and this is heroin, more the heroin stuff as opposed to opiate, 4,019. It's not even that bad. Opiates, again, 49, 50,000. Alcohol, 95. Tobacco, 480,000. Are these things that we should be spending $47 billion on? And obviously the two most dangerous ones are legal. Psychedelic death rates, right? Because we're here at Cannadelics. We want to be able to expand our mind. And based on doing this presentation, I'm going to be starting filing lawsuits, or not lawsuits necessarily, but so everyone knows, right? Cannabis is getting rescheduled from 1 to 3, hopefully, potentially at some point. For the last 10 years, I've been filing, since 2009, I guess, so a little over, close to 10 years, filing motions to dismiss in my cases, saying that cannabis as a Schedule I substance is unconstitutional because it's arbitrary, capricious, it's not based on fact, reason. Schedule I substance, high potential for abuse, unsafe under doctor's use, I forget the other condition, but it's the most severe category. So when I'm putting this together, and I never really even thought about this before, but let's talk about psychedelic death rates. Extremely rare for mushrooms. Eat them up. And there's Cannadelic. He passed away. He's African guy who does psychedelics and martial arts, but his position is, listen, you have to basically eat your body weight in mushrooms to have sort of a death or a toxic effect. I'm not suggesting eat that much, but don't be afraid to eat 20, 30, 50 grams. LSD, deaths caused by LSD, extremely rare. Extremely rare. MDMA ecstasy, so they got 1,500 deaths involving synthetic opiates other than methadone, including fentanyl and analogs like that one there, cafentanil, but which some of them may be associated with MDMA. So is this the real drug war that we're fighting? Is this why we're locking up people and spending millions of dollars on incarcerating people and destroying people's lives? Cost of illegal drugs versus alcohol and tobacco. NIDA estimated opiate misuse costs about $78.5 billion a year. Healthcare, addiction treatment, criminal justice. Economic cost of smoking, CDC, $300 billion a year. These are where your tax dollars are going, people. Economic burden on alcohol abuse, $249 billion in 2019. This is where your money's going, and this is what it costs. So it's ridiculous. The drug war. Okay, it doesn't just have an impact on the people that are using drugs, it has an impact on their families as well. Incarceration is the biggest destroyer of the family than pretty much anything else that we have going on. It causes a financial strain, income dropping an average of 22%, and especially in these days and times, it's impossible pulling that out of a family. Incarceration reduces individual annual income. So not only are you and your family screwed while you're in jail, but when you get out, you have a significant reduction in the amount of money that you can earn because of that. And I'm proud to say with our nonprofit organization, Tucana, we do a lot of sealing and expungements to try to help people clean up their records and stuff like that, because these things do impact people's lives, not just for the time they're incarcerated. This whole notion, like go do your penance, you're sentenced, and then you're okay. You did, like, it's not like timeout. A kid gets put in timeout, they're out of timeout. Okay, they have no restrictions on them. They can do what they want again, right? It's not like that when you're put in jail. That follows you for the rest of your life. And it destroys people, and it destroys families. Children's education. Children are likely to experience disruptions in education and changes in schools, decreased academic performances. There's not a parent in their home a lot more times because there's only one, the other one's in prison, and increased likelihood of dropping out. So these seem like easy fixes where we can continue to evolve and make our community better. Children with incarcerated parents have lower educational attainment compared to their peers. Long-term consequences and future opportunities are impacted by obviously a good start and a good education. It pushes families into poverty, causing inadequate resources for education, school supplies, tutoring, extracurricular activities, and causing educational disruptions in children when we all, right, as a country, children first, we got to take care of our children, but we're destroying them. So again, who's the hypocrite? Addiction rates, okay? Let's talk about really what we're destroying lives for again. Addiction rates in cocaine, 20 to 25%. Heroin, 23%. And some of these do or do not have physical or psychological addiction. Some of them obviously have withdrawal, more harsh withdrawal symptoms than others. Opiates, 23%. Alcohol, 15%. Tobacco, 32%. And I put this one in there just because I think I think it's a killer. Sugar, 75%. And especially the more we learn about our microplastics in our water and our ultra-processed foods and how bad they are, I think it's important to show that our government doesn't care about that, right? This drug war is supposed to be about your safety. It's supposed to be about what's doing best for you to make sure that you know what is right for you, because that's what it's about. It's about them saying, we know what's better for you, but they don't care about those things that are really impacting society and killing us. Drug addiction rates, and again, going back to everyone's favorite thing here, psychedelics. Psilocybin mushrooms are considered to have a low potential for addiction. I've really never met anyone addicted to psychedelics. LSD, considered addictive in some way, but not the same as heroin and cocaine, right? This goes back to a psychological addiction and not other addictions. Same thing with MDMA. And the way I say it, and I saw this show years ago, and it was a show on, basically they were interviewing people in Amsterdam and comparing, the United States and stuff like that. And he was like, I feel bad for Americans, We have the freedom at least to be able to do things. We have the freedom to do what we want. And, these drug addiction rates for these substances, again, goes back to why I'm going to start challenging it as a Schedule I substance. How are these highly addictive? How are these dangerous to society? How are these causing people to really have detriment in their life? And, there's two different ways I think you can use psychedelics, right? Number one, healing, in which is a lot of talk about that, but I also think exploration, enlightenment, evolution of your own self, of your own mind. And so I think these things, and that's the worst thing I think our government is doing, and I said it for years, the worst thing that the criminalization of cannabis did was that it put cannabis users in the closet. So it's oppression. It's like, we don't want you talking about this. We don't want you going out and saying that you do this, because then we're going to come after you. And really, coming out on this issue was inspired by a book by Carl Hart. He was a former NIDA. Love the book. If you're interested in this topic, definitely read it. He was a NIDA scientist for like 20 plus years. So his job, best job ever, was to administer drugs to people. All kinds of drugs, everything. And see the effects on people. And after doing that for 20 years, he wrote this book, Drugs for Adults. And so that was a big, inspiration of coming out on this and being like, listen, it's time. We have to, as individuals, just like cannabis users start coming out, like, we use psychedelics. We use it for fun. We use it for healing. We use it for trauma. We use it, just for life and evolution and love more and to grow more. And that's what humans are supposed to do, right? To grow. We're not supposed to sit stagnant and stay with the status quo. We got to push the envelope, especially of our mind. And I think the time now more than ever that I was put here for this is to continue this evolution forward. So what this means, 80% of people do not get addicted to drugs. So 100% of people are arrested for this alleged huge crisis for 20% of people that fall into that category that are actually using drugs. That does not sound like sound policy to me. That does not sound like it's a good use of our money. It does not sound like it's humans taking care of humans, and it doesn't sound like what law enforcement is supposed to do, protect and serve, not seek out and destroy. Portugal. So it's not like this isn't happening. And I will say Portugal has been decriminalized for a while. Okay, decriminalization is not what I believe we should do. I think it should be legalization, not decriminalization. But the case of Portugal has been going on for a long time, and they are a model for us to see that this does work. So, overdose deaths. Since, 1990, to 2021, when they decriminalized, they had a 50% reduction in overdose deaths. What else can you say about that? How is that not beneficial? And again, that's not decriminalization. And I don't agree with what Oregon did, so I don't know, Oregon is trying to put the cat back in the bag. They legalized or decriminalized everything, but then they haven't all allegedly. I've heard that the stories, the media reports are different than actuality, having all these opiate deaths and fentanyl deaths and stuff like that. Well, they didn't set up the system correctly. And I got to say, I was amazed and shocked and absolutely blessed and to see. I read an article on spring break this year, right? And so Fort Lauderdale was allegedly giving people out test strips that they could put in their drinks to see if they're roofied. Every responsible drug user I know would much rather have their test strips to see if they have fentanyl in their shit if they don't want it, and what's in that. So why don't we start doing that for everything? So as Portugal went, you can see those deaths, 369 in 1999, and obviously they have a totally different population than us. 2011 to 10, 152 and 12, 54, 72, 63, 81. Over the last 20 years, God, my eyes. Portugal cut deaths by over 50%, decade after decade, and reduced the number of HIV, hepatitis, and cases like that. And if you don't know why that's in there, is because when people are IV drug users and using needles, that's what spreads those diseases. Research in countries like Switzerland have implemented harm reduction strategies, experienced a substantial decrease in overdose deaths, 50% with harm reduction measures. So we're cutting that in half. We're taking our 100,000, down to 50,000 basically overnight. Drug-induced deaths per million population. Look at this one. Does the drug war work? Look at us, we're insane. And this is by per million people, so it's not, just by population, it's per how many people. These are how many drug deaths we have, and I'm sure the stress that we have in this world, in this country, that we put on, and depression and things like that contribute to that in this country. But, different policies, reduction in drug violence crime, right? How great is that? There was just a recent study that came out this week that again confirmed that couples who use cannabis are less likely to engage in domestic violence. And I can say as an attorney, I don't think I have ever had one case in 20 years, 22 years, of a domestic violence case that did not involve alcohol and not one that involved cannabis. One of the fondest memories I have, it was like the day after Super Bowl Sunday, right? So Super Monday, I'm in court, and there's literally a whole family in jail for getting into a fight because they were all pissed drunk before the Super Bowl even started. So you had a dad and a son, the two guys, and a mom and a daughter, all four of them tossed in jail, all four of them bruised up and battered from beating on each other. So I want less of that. We know with cannabis, the statistics are showing a significant decrease in alcohol use, especially imbibing in alcohol use to, intoxication. Economic benefits of legalizing, and again, the drug-related violence and the drug-related deaths are significantly decreased. Financial impact. Right? What's the biggest thing everyone needs right now is money, including our country. We're drowning in debt. We're spending our money on other people while our own citizens are starving. And this could be a gateway to a path forward. Great new tax revenue. Cato Institute estimated legalizing could generate over $106 billion in annual budgetary sales from law enforcement and taxes. Reduce the size of the illicit drug market, redirect revenue away from criminal organizations. And I don't have the site there, but up to $100 billion annually from criminal organizations to legal businesses is the estimate on what we can change there. So again, changing the paradigm. We've done it with cannabis, as we've seen, right? And so not only of the cannabis dispensaries, increased a lot of revenue, not only in tax dollars, but business dollars, obviously jobs. But when you look at the stats, especially at the beginning, but you're looking at the restaurant sales increase, you're looking at the tourism increase, you're looking at property value increases. All of that comes with cannabis that no one really talks about. But you see it in this chart. And, you know, again, this is cannabis, but if we extrapolate that, and obviously cannabis is used much more than any other drugs, all the other drugs combined, but, you know, we're talking about significant tax dollars we can generate for this. Safety first. You know, this is my goal. You know, everyone is walking down the streets living in fear. You never know if you're going to go out to a concert and there's going to be some psycho want to shoot people up. So I really think that, you know, the legalization of drugs will do that. As an attorney, you know, you see, you get busted, you have the odor of cannabis, here it leads to a search, now you get busted, now you have a half a dozen cops on the side of the road with you, you know, all cha-ching, 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 taking up their money, taking up their time. For someone, honestly, that left this after an educational day, having a good time, bought some stuff, and, you know, didn't unfortunately stop before the white stop bar, you know, or come to a complete stop. And honestly, none of you guys do it, man. I am a little OCD and I watch traffic all the time because, you know, technically cops can only stop what a reasonable officer would stop somebody for. And none of them do it. And honestly, nobody comes to a complete stop on a right on red or anything. So please do it. Stop before the light line if it's there. You know, just avoid having problems. You know, sometimes the best offense is a good defense. If I have a basis to challenge the stop, that's the best way to win the case, and I love doing it. Empty the jails. You know, we spend over $200 billion per year on incarceration of drug offenders for jails. This is absolutely ridiculous, and it goes back to these contracts. People locked up in a cell for using a substance and not hurting anybody. That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about not condoning DUIs. We're not talking about, you know, and I don't, again, yeah, the cannabis user who gets so high they got to go rob the store to get their weed. But we're not talking about those types of situations, right? You commit a burglary, you commit a theft, again, you're still going to go to jail. But we're talking about for possession, for your own use of the substance. Because 90% of these arrests are for people getting pulled over, leaving a club, a bar, or speeding, or whatever, and a dog coming around or them smelling something. So a study published in the Journal of Public Economics estimated we'd save about $41.3 billion in law enforcement and criminal justice costs. And I can tell you, you know, in a criminal court case, 90% of the people in there are in there for drugs. So we're sitting there for hours on these drug cases, one after another for possession cases. And it's not just young kids, it's all ages. You know, and that's the thing, like DUIs and drug charges are your 18-year-olds up to your 70-year-olds. Impact of providing clean and safe and legal drugs. Supervised injection sites, you know, reduces the harm, prevention for infectious diseases. Minimize people using illicit or dangerous substances, right? So the fentanyl mixed in and stuff like that. We got to get rid of that. So what I say is let them legalize, educate, test, tax, medicate, right? So if we have these testing and, you know, you're going to these stores like the MMTCs to buy your drugs, you know they're tested and they're clean. A study in the International Journal of Drug Policy provided that for using this type of harm reduction cost, they saved about, you know, 17,250 American dollars, you know, 15,799 pounds per patient, and you obviously saw the numbers on the amount of people that we have, especially for opiates that are in there. Caring and compassionate approach. This is where we have to go, right? Instead of healing people. And this is the great thing about drugs, right? Is that if you are a drug addict and you go to a rehab and you turn yourself in, you go to a rehab, you get into rehab, you help yourself, no crime, no foul, right? You're not getting arrested, your life's not being destroyed. But if you happen to be driving down the street or walking down the street and get stopped by a cop who's got a bad day, there you go, your life's destroyed now, even though both of those people are doing the same thing. So this is really where we have to go. We got to clean up our communities and destroy the cartels. You know, that's the bottom line, right? They did it with alcohol prohibition, and it's like, is not this the same thing, right? They ended up getting rid of that. It obviously started mafia, criminal organizations around alcohol. You know, Walgreens was one of the first alcohol medical providers. They were providing medical alcohol back then. But we got to be able to take these people out, you know, and start moving towards compassion and helping and caring about people. Implement affecting regulations on testing. You know, no one should have to get bad drugs. Same thing with strategies on dosaging and use. So you know what you're going to use. And this is the problem we have with edibles right now, right? All these bad stories and horror stories about edibles. Okay, yeah, you eat a 100-milligram bar, you're going to be messed up. But you know what? And I equate it to alcohol, right? If you had no clue what alcohol was or how it affected your body, and you went and you drank a bottle of Everclear, you're going to be, as our legislature calls it, overdosed. And with alcohol, you actually may die, right? And they're calling it overdose with cannabis. But isn't it just education about it, right? Because it's like the same thing. It's not overdose, it's a hangover. Isn't that what we call it? Isn't that like I'm blackout drunk? Isn't that what we call it? So why are they calling it an overdose with cannabis? But so it's education. And I think the same thing with drugs, right? Everyone has seen Pulp Fiction, right? Okay, you know, we get that famous scene when she goes out, right? Because she goes into his pocket, she thinks she's getting a bag of cocaine. She's like, I'm gonna give myself a nice fat line. And it happens to be heroin. Big difference between the two. So, you know, those things have to be known to people, and that education will prevent these overdoses. And Carl Hart says it in his book, and he talks about this. He's like, a lot of overdoses can be prevented, especially with opiates. We don't know if, you know, are some of those intentional suicides, but a lot of them are dosing. People go home and they take dose, they don't feel anything. Or with Ambien, right? They'll take an Ambien, they'll black out because they don't go to sleep right away, and they'll take another Ambien and will forget about it and end up driving the car, fugue state, passed out, not knowing what's going on, and end up in jail. Investments, right? We put our money, all that prison money, into rehab facilities, into care facilities, into helping and protecting people, right? Another thing I think with drugs, right? When you're doing heroin, you're doing cocaine, you're doing, unless you're with your friends, you know, you're doing it in the closet, right? You're not like out in the open doing it and showing people you're doing it, unlike alcohol, unlike tobacco. So you can have those interdictions, right, with those people because you're aware of what's going on. And I think when we get to move by that and we get rid of that stereotype, because so many people who are addicted to drugs, and I got to tell you, I've asked a lot of people, I've only really had one client in 22 years that was like glad. Like, yeah, this is it. I'm happy. I don't have to work. I get money from a trust fund. I'm doing drugs every day. I enjoy it. Like, but 90% of the people are like, no, I don't want to be like this. You know, so it's not like people in many ways, especially with how opiate addiction starts, right? You know, and I remember seeing the commercial with the dentist, and he's like, well, you know, we just started going from the pharmaceutical companies came to us, oh, this is better. This will relieve their pain better. So they just went from, you know, one substance to the opiates and started giving it for a tooth pain. Can't imagine getting that for a tooth pain when I was a kid. So, you know, we have to get away from that and put this towards education, proper dosing, and safety for our people. A comprehensive approach combines legalization for drug safety, testing, evidence-based addiction treatment, prevention measures to mitigate the harm and reduce the rates of reduction. And if we throw in psychedelics, right, with that, I think we're good, because we know now that is probably being one of the most promising medicines to get off of addiction and opiates and stuff. So it all comes full circle. Nature wins. Summary and conclusion. Compassionate future forward. It's time to lead with caring and love for people and acceptance of their addiction and helping them as opposed to ostracizing them, pushing them out of society and labeling them for their lives. It has done nothing to curb drug use. It has nothing, as you see, those addiction rates continue to rise, has nothing to reduce addiction rates and nothing to reduce opiate deaths. It's about time to abolish the DEA. You know, they just destroy people's lives, destroy the cartels. End the fentanyl epidemic, right? That's gone unless you're choosing to use it, and create billions of dollars in tax revenue and put law enforcement to stopping real crimes like violence. They should be out walking the beat again, making sure shootings aren't happening, making sure people are safe. And Q&A, any questions?
Thank you. Oh, thank you. My name is India. Okay, so I wanted to understand your why, and I heard it, I think you're tired of seeing a waste of resources, and as an attorney, a criminal attorney, a criminal defense attorney?
Yeah, I do a little bit of everything. Yeah,
so it almost comes off, I would say, a little bit idyllic because, and I'm sure you get that a lot, over 70% of ad revenue is pharmaceutical marketing. So they get a lot of money. I'm from Indiana. I'm from Indianapolis, so Eli Lilly has the entire city basically in a headlock. They control a lot of what we do, what we have going on. And we also know, like you said, private prison money. So you have these two things. You have money for big pharma and you have money for private prisons. And that incentivizes getting people addicted to drugs and then incarcerating them for using drugs that the government is not getting tax dollars from. So understanding all of that and your why, what is your next step in getting us closer to what you would like to see while understanding what you are up against?
So as far as the why thing, my why thing is really, I think it's just a better compassion and caring way of this issue. Being a criminal defense attorney, I deal with people who've dealt with addiction for the last 20 years. 90% of my criminal cases are drug cases, right? I really don't do violent crime. I try to stay away from that. Who knows? Just, this is, just like how cannabis evolves, right? The first step is education, is getting the knowledge out, and then getting acceptance. So that's where we're here now. I ran for office in 2022. I may run again in 2026. So continuing to evolve this issue and really evolve the human race, right? Because that's what it's about. It's about looking at people differently, looking at things differently, and what makes a person crazy? Doing something wrong and then continuing to do the same thing over and over again. And we've been doing that with the drug war for 30 years. So all of those things lead to it. I just feel like this is my passion, this is my dream, this is why I'm here, to push people forward, to enlighten them, to grow emotionally, to get more connected, and to live like humans should be as opposed to animals fighting each other for everything. To say that there's not enough resources in the world is absurd. To say that there's not enough ways for us to come together and work together to end all the things that we can is insane to me. Can you imagine all the great minds getting together and be like, hey, let's end the energy crisis? Done. And I think that's what we have to do. And this is, I think, a step of bringing back our freedom. Honestly, I think it's a freedom issue, especially of our mind with psychedelics, right? No one should be able to tell me I can't explore my mind. So it's a lot of those things. And I hate people getting destroyed from being arrested. It just doesn't, it's not serving any purpose. And now we have the proof and the stats to show it's not.
My name is Laura Hartman. I am a former VA nurse, and I have been working on VA reform for over a decade. So this specifically is going to relate to being a veteran advocate. What are your thoughts around the reschedulization, specifically with legislators working on a national level to impact and declassify?
Are you talking about cannabis?
Yes, I am talking about cannabis.
So I am mixed on this issue. So I think rescheduling is great to a Schedule 3. Ask me what it does for you guys. Nothing really. I think the two potential impacts it has on everyday people are gun rights, right, which we're already seeing that change and evolve with all the new gun law cases across the country and our U.S. Supreme Court's stance on gun laws, and maybe a potentially employee rights, right? So I deal with a lot of employee cases, and their biggest issue, well, it's a federal Schedule I substance, so therefore we can't allow it as employees, you know, even though any prescription drug you can, or if you had marijuana, you can. So I think those are really the only two possible ways that it helps the common people. Otherwise, it helps the people that some people don't like, you know, but the big businesses, right? It helps the True Leaves of the world, all the multi-state operators, because it should open up banking, which I think is 100% right thing to do, which I don't think is a bad thing for us, because I think it opens up banking, then it opens up their money to do what else everyone else does to get legislation passed, right? Let's throw some lobbying money at it, and then that'll happen. So I hope it'll happen. I've been hearing that we may look at it like it's going to happen soon. Most people are saying it may be a couple years. Other people who are trying to use it as a wedge for the election are saying it'll get done before November. So, you know, it's a game they're playing with people's lives for no reason for a plan. And to me, it makes me sick. So if you don't know, I ran as a Republican in 2022 on the freedom agenda. You know, they didn't like me too much. So I'm now NPA. Because I'm just kind of sick of politics in all circumstances, but unfortunately we need it. So that's my position on 3. It's a political gain, and I think Trump could end it easily by saying, yep, let's support it, decriminalize it, you know, and he would end that whole wedge that's going on. So I wish it would do more. I wish they would deschedule, but, you know, it's a step in the right direction.
All right, we have time for a few more questions. Does anybody else have a question for Mike? Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mike. Could you go into a little bit more detail and unpack how legalization affects drug deaths and all the long list of negatives that come without it? How does that happen?
So if you're talking about how does it happen on drug deaths, right? So number one, it becomes an educational issue. I think with legalization, and you know, this isn't even something Portugal and stuff did, and I don't know how they're dealing with it, but you know, I think the testing of it is an important aspect. A lot of people die, especially we're seeing now, right? They're doing heroin or they're doing something and there's fentanyl mixed into it. So those are parameters in there. But think about it, right? When you go into a casino, what do you see everywhere? You have a gambling problem, call 1-800. My vision would be that kind of like when you go into one of the, you know, MMTCs here, they have a consultation lounge. They would be able to provide, you know, services for people that have those addiction rates. But it's education. It's, you know, and we saw it with tobacco, right? So Florida for a while was one of the most successful states in the country in reducing teen tobacco use. It was education, cessation programs, right, getting them off of it, and strict rules on who purchases and who gets it. So I think really that model is shown to be effective in all aspects, you know, and I think it should be used just like it is with tobacco. And you know, maybe my mom didn't know the ills of tobacco, but certainly people who pick it up today absolutely should know what it does to you, right? So, and same thing with alcohol. You know, it becomes a freedom of choice thing as far as those aspects of it. But I think that those, again, most drug users that I've used, that people are addicted, you know, one started with opiates, a lot of them from prescription drugs. I think the stats are like 80% of people start that way. So that's a medical problem. Right, we loop that into illegal drugs right now, but that's really a pharmaceutical medical problem, right? That we are getting, that illegal drugs are getting blamed for the way that I see it, right? Because people are buying it and getting it off label, that's why. But so, you know, most of those deaths are caused by opiates that I don't consider a legal drug, you know? My drug dealer, or at least back in the day, right, he's not selling opiates, you know? I get my weed, my mushrooms, my coke, you know, but that's about it. So, you know, I think that those programs, and it's about compassion, man. You know, it's just about compassion. You know, when you're around people who are addicted and arrested to substances and you get to know them and just their whole mindset is like, my life is destroyed, I have nothing, like they're in that cycle. And you can't end that cycle by sticking them in jail. And I have to say, I don't like drug court because it includes jail and you got to get arrested to do it. But it's proven that drug court works. So you know what that means? That's proven that treatment works. So we don't have to do it with, you know what the hook over your head is? It's getting thrown in jail, you know, as opposed to you relapsing and having to come out in your family. You know, and it kills me because people violate probation, like, and you know, most of the drugs, you get relapse. It's a term in rehabilitation. It's a medical term. It means something. People relapse. It's a known. So why are you punishing them by throwing them in jail for going through the process? It'd be like punishing someone from purging on ayahuasca. Come on.
All right. Anybody else have a question for Mike? Pablo.
Thank you, Mike, for all your information and knowledge. That was awesome. My question is, you know, plant medicine, especially psilocybin shrooms, especially in my journey, has been very powerful and healing. So as a collective, how do we express our feelings, how great this plant medicine is? Who do we need as leaders in the community? Who do we need to express the greatness of this plants to? Do we need to talk to law enforcement? Do we need to talk to government? Do we need to talk to institutions, corporations? Like, who should we be talking to, and what levels, local, state, federal, for leaders to start making an impact?
Well, you know, short answer is keep following me, man. Let's keep on pushing this journey. You know what we've been doing. Because I don't know anyone else that's doing it. I don't know anyone else that's talking about it. But join the movement. Let's get this going, and let's keep pushing it forward. Because, you know, once it's out, it's out. So keep going to events. Keep speaking. I know we're going to keep on pushing it. Our platform for 26 is going to be pushing it. And I think that's the only way we can do. Get like-minded people together. And get them on board to stop being afraid of coming out of the closet on it, speaking out about it, say, I love, I live, I'm successful because I like to use drugs.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions from Mike, one more?
This is more like a personal question. So if I'm out in the park foraging for mushrooms and I find some great ones and I take it home and I use them, what's the legality with Florida about doing that? And is there any repercussions from doing that?
So, you know, technically mushrooms or psilocybin is illegal. You know, if you get it in the fresh form and things like that, and it becomes like, and I equate it to like nitrous, right? So if you know what nitrous is, like laughing gas type of stuff, they also sell it at Party City for make your own whipped cream, right? So it's kind of like the same thing, right? It's kind of like your Coke can. You know, if you're not using it for illegal purposes, like exploring your own mind, then it's technically could be legal. I don't know, it's psilocybin, it's just a mushroom here, right? Just like your nitrous tank is, or your whipped cream canister is legal until you use it for an illegal use. Same thing with your Coke can, right? So it's that gray area that you have. And if you are picking them fresh, I would, you know, two things I would say. Number one, I don't know what it is. I picked these mushrooms. I don't know what they are. So they have to prove knowledge of substance. And do the same thing with hemp and cannabis. Whatever you have, if you don't have cannabis in your packaging from the dispensary, I bought hemp, I thought it was hemp, give me a defense. So that's what I would say.
All right, great question, Pablo. Well, you know, here at Cannadelic, we have a huge conscious community of people with everything from products to legalities to integration. And all of these are important pieces of what I'd like to call, you know, our plant medicine revolution. You know, things are changing. It is moving slowly. But with leaders like Mike, with leaders like yourselves that are out here, we can share these experiences with our community and start changing minds little by little. You know, it's not just take this as a substance, as a Band-Aid. You know, the root cause of addiction sometimes is much more deeper than the substances that are being used for that. So as we start finding these alternative therapies, we're able to work with these things and work together and change the laws through the progress and through science and through everything else. And, you know, our next panel, Mike's going to be on it as well. We're going to talk about the next steps in legalizing adult use cannabis here in the state of Florida. Something that we started on over 10 years ago when I came into this industry as a patient myself. So, Mike, thank you very much. I know Jody is here. I'd like everybody that is going to be on our A2 panel to get up on the stage. If you want to grab a quick run to the restroom, we're going to be starting in about 5 minutes. I'm just waiting on Kelly's coming here. That's my panel questions. Yeah. Great job, Mike.
How fucking crazy am I? Legalize all drugs. I love it.
We'll meet back here right at 12:15. 12:15.